Hey guys, what we're going to do is just do a brief overview and introduction to the book of Second Timothy so that when we begin, we can just start reading the word. Before you study any book, if you can, it's always a good idea to set the context, to climb into the story, to know who, what, when, where, why, and how it was written so that it comes to life more, and it helps you understand also, often what's being said. So let's briefly do that for Second Timothy. This won't be too long. So one of the main themes of Timothy is endurance, and Paul talks about running a race, and the Bible talks about it being a race, a marathon, not a sprint. And this is a pretty good analogy. A marathon is often a long course, and there's stops along the way to refuel, and there's different stations. But it's a long route. This is a map of a called Conquer the Wall Marathon. And if we look at running a marathon, the goal is to finish the race. That's our goal. You sign up and realize you're in a race with a finish line, right? You sign up and you start the race and you realize there is a finish line. We have a finish line, which is Jesus. That's in Hebrews. There's no shortcuts or cheating. You have to run the route. There's people watching. We know from Hebrews also that there's a cloud of witnesses watching us. You have to train. You just can't go out and run a marathon. You've got to be in shape. You have to have the right equipment. You can't run in your bare feet. You can't run in sandals. You have to have running shoes. And we must be equipped as believers and train through spiritual disciplines. And you have to know the course, the dangers, how to fuel, water, and the location. You have to know the course. And all these things go into running a marathon, and everything correlates to being a believer. And you have to endure. There are things that happen in a marathon: cramps, you feel like giving up, you're thirsty, you're hungry. Maybe you run out of fuel and you have to make it to the next station where they'll give you some. But you also must know there's a reward at the end, and that's what keeps you going. So let's look at this letter to Second Timothy. In the background here, you see the ancient ruins of Ephesus, one of the most famous in the world. And the reason is that Timothy was a leader, if not the pastor at Ephesus, where this letter was written to by Paul. Now, you're going to get a copy of this, but this is one of the most important diagrams for studying the New Testament because it shows you all of Paul's missionary journeys, when each church was planted, that's the little church icon, and also when each letter was written in relation to that church. And for this book here, the important thing to realize is that Paul had already written a letter to Timothy, First Timothy, from Philippi, maybe during his fourth missionary journey, along with Titus, around 63-65 AD. And now this is Second Timothy. Now Paul is in the Roman dungeon. He's not just in jail, he's probably on death row a few years later, before he was martyred. And over here we see at the top here, we can see the church of Ephesus was planted by Paul, just about maybe 10 years earlier. And then you can see here the book of Ephesians was written, in between that. So that's kind of, when things are happening. This letter is at the very end of Paul's life. This is an outline. We won't discuss it. I've given you a copy of it. There's many ways to break up a book. This is a good one just to give you some ideas of the flow and movement of the chapter and its various topics. But one of the main topics is endurance and perseverance, which you'll see as we begin the study. So just some background things. The author is the Apostle Paul. He states that in the first verse. The date, as best we can tell, is around 67 to 68 AD, 3 to 5 years after 1 Timothy, 10 years after the church of Ephesus was planted, as I showed you on the timeline. And the origin is, he writes it from the Roman prison or death row. The destination is to Timothy, who was the leader or pastor in Ephesus. We know that from church history and from First Timothy. The occasion, why was it written? Well, Timothy was struggling and weakening in his endurance and under persecution, false teaching, and pressures of the world, like any leader can fall into. And Paul was writing to encourage him and give him some advice. And we know that it talks of Timothy's tears, his fears, that he's ashamed. So we know that Timothy was struggling, as we all do. And church tradition, just so you know, has Timothy and Mary buried there at Ephesus. Some other background points. Paul wrote to Timothy urging him to hasten to Rome for one last visit with him. Paul was in Rome. Paul wanted to see Timothy one more time. We don't know whether he made it or not. But according to tradition, Paul was never released, but he was martyred as he had foreseen. Major themes of the book. Spiritual leadership. Timothy's a leader, and there can be a lot to learn about what a spiritual leader is like from this letter. Endurance and perseverance is one that is a major flow throughout the entire letter, which is, relevant certainly for us as we're living in the last days that 2 Timothy wrote about. Faithfulness to the gospel and the word is mentioned quite a bit. The last days and the coming apostasy are turning away from the faith is another theme. Finishing the race, as we talked about at the beginning, is another theme. And just to give you a little bit more context and background, we have here where Ephesus is, which would be modern day Turkey. If you go over there, it's Kusadasi is what it's called. And this is a look from today. You can see in the background there on the left the giant Colosseum, which is both Paul and the Book of Acts, and then the city is up there in between the hills on the right. This is a model of what the city was like at the time. The city center where you came into the port, and you had markets and the theater and the stadium and everything. Would have been filled into by many homes everywhere. They're doing excavations as we speak. So this was an important city at the time. The ruins there are amazing. They're one of the best in the ancient world. I was there. These are pictures that I took. You can see the ancient library, a magnificent structure. This is all that's left of it. And of course, there in the background, the Colosseum or the theater. Where Paul was in the Book of Acts. I mean, everything is stone. That's what's kind of amazing about it. And there was also the Temple of Artemis at Ephesus there. You can read the quote there below on your own from Antipater that talks about this is one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. But this city was steeped in idolatry and false gods. And they had a temple there for Artemis there, which people came from all over the world to worship and see this great wonder. And you can imagine how that affected Timothy trying to spread the gospel, that's false. I mean, this structure of man is basically would be nothing if Jesus is true. And you can imagine the resistance to that. So quite a feat he had. Now, this is just something I want you to do. Look for and keep track of all the exhortations in 2 Timothy. Don't use my list, don't cheat, but I've kept track of them, and it's a good thing to write down. An exhortation is something that Paul urged Timothy to do. Stir up the gift of God which is in you, he said in verse 6. Do not fear in verse 7. Keep a list of those because it'll be neat at the end to kind of go through those. And all those will be exhortations that we know that God is speaking to us. So that's it. We can begin studying the book now with all the context set. And we will see you guys in the morning.